Okay, so first stage of data analysis. So remember that everything was transcribed, the qualitative data, and I import it into this. This is what I showed. So what you have here is you have your sources on here in NVivo, and then it opens here your sources, and then you put here free nodes, and you say.
You select here.
You create. No, the tree nodes is already there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then here you build your tree nodes. You can click and say this is all. Yes, and you write
here.
And yes, and what happens here is, if you see here, social capital. I have diversity, networks, outlook, participation, power. This is my framework. But then I had here.
You select here and you write social capital,
and then underneath social capital you can put diversity.
Okay.
And then you can
select again.
No, you select again, and you click here.
Okay.
And then it opens up a new node, the sub node.
Okay.
Yeah, and the sub node. So these are this is the mother. These are the children.
Okay.
Yeah? But this child has their children on its own.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, so you do that, and when you have here your transcript, you can highlight this or this here, and you drag it into where you want it to have.
Okay.
And then it's coded. It stays here. But you code it.
But you make the connection.
You need all your analysis.
Okay, you introduce the name, it's your concept.
It's your concept.
You introduce the word, and you introduce this text in relation with this context.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. The program makes nothing.
No. What it makes is, I tell you what it makes. So no, nothing. The program, what it can do is, it can search trust. You say, put into here everything what is trust, and put the whole paragraph. Yeah. It can do that.
Okay.
But it's not intuitive. This is about you saying, do this. Yeah. And then you might have trust, which refers to, in England, the trust is also the national trust. So trust, just trust, the word trust. So this first is quite simple, and broad coding, several nodes were being created, and how under the broad concept of social capital I use the same concept as in my original social capital framework. As I said, I used here, and that is the beauty, that is created with the program.
So the figure.
Okay. Because what it creates is you create relationships, and this is the parent. This is the parent of this one, and this is why it says parent.
The program creates alone this, or you have to ask for?
You ask for it. You say, make me a model.
Okay.
And then it creates
many possibilities.
And of course. If you think in coding, you have your trees. So that could be seen also as a tree. Social capital is, I didn't represent it as a tree. Normally you would say social capital underneath participation, diversity, outlook, blah 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 blah. Underneath the reciprocity would be good reciprocity, bad reciprocity. Yeah. Underneath trust is inward looking trust, broad trust, radius of trust. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So then was done through an initial focus on how Young will describe. So it is all about the description. So coding types of trust. Yeah. So I know that the literature says there's thick and thin trust, radius of trust, and Granovetta's writings about strength and weak ties. So during the first phase, the researcher referred to different types of trust in relation to different people, just friends, good mates, different. So that emerges. This initial analysis of qualitative data combined with theoretical approaches informed the formulation of some further survey questions. So the young people talk about this. I analyzed it through the in vivo. I then say the literature says thick and thin grass, and I want to say, okay, this combined with the young people, what questions do I ask? So I asked the standard question, generally speaking, do you think that most people can be trusted? Also qualitative question to further explore the radius. I trust which type of people, I don't trust which type of people. That is to look at the radio of trust, and the assumption is when people say I just don't trust strangers, I don't specific people, and that reflects a small radius of trust. I don't trust specific people. But then here I use the concept of young people's account on trust. So this is theory. This is what young people said. So I use these. So second stage of data analysis, the use of mixed strategy. So I explain, okay, this is all the explanation. So screening and cleaning of data, you know that. You do the survey. Then I did a factor analysis with those factors which I knew I could do a factor analysis.
This factor analysis made you with
SPSS.
SPSS, okay. Structural factor analysis or exploratory factor analysis?
Exploratory.
Okay, you try to find categories.
Yes. Now, this is very simple because I'm not an expert. And I also made a mistake because I put into factor the yes and no questions, but then I could justify to do it. There are ways to do it. So somebody helped me to analyze it.
Okay.
So suitability of data first, because you are quantitative, no? You do quantitative analysis.
I do.
So factor extraction.
But I don't work with a factor analysis.
Okay, so you have to do factor rotation.
I understand how to make that. But
so I do it with SPSS. So what factors would come out? Networks. Varied networks based on different groups, such as after-school interest phase. They tend to meet their friends through these groups. Area networks based on socializing on the street and having their friends on the street. There was a small family networks, but it wasn't significant. And diversity, have different types of friends, enjoying being with people of different. Then safety, street unsafe, and being at home. So these were factors where different factors came out. Reciprocity. So all these different factors emerged. So they are being put into
quantitative data of the service.
So then significant differences were explored through using variables. Is there gender difference? Are there in the factors with the gender, factors with the different areas, factors with, where are difference? Who is different to whom? What are the differences? So
the differences between
female and male. So you have one factor about I like to socialize on the street. Is there a difference between the accounts of young people who are female or male? Is there significant? I have to say I don't find the literature, and it would be interesting to say there are new theories which says significant theories in this applied research is not very good. It should be meaningful differences, but nobody defines meaningful, because if you think, you have a local area, social capital, there might be a significant statistical difference between women saying, I trust people in the area, and men. But if you look at the statistics, it's 56% of men and 50% of women.
Yeah.
And you think, actually for a community, it's significant, but it's not meaningful. Yeah? This doesn't affect the community. However, it would be 20% of women and 50% of men. You said, ooh, there's something big here. Yeah. So I think in applied research, but I have heard somebody talking about it, but I can't find the literature who then says what would be meaningful. Yeah. Because I think, especially for applied research, for scientific research, that might be significant. And and I think that is a really interesting concept which needs to be explored further. So in the factor analysis, now I did this graph because for me it was easier visual. But obviously if you think about factor, they would be in boxes. Yeah, because it's not a continuum. But I liked to visualize it like that. And what you see here is I put all the factors against people who have diverse networks, school, college and locality networks. These are the three groups. And look what comes out, which is interesting, is school and college networks were very low in agency and the reciprocity and trust very high. School and college, very high. Very high in family and friend support. This group here is very high in family and friends support, and that was just to explore what are the potential differences. And I'm saying I'm not making any assumptions yet. I'm just saying, wow, it seems that there are differences. And then I further do the cluster analysis because I can see that there are differences in the cluster. Let's explore it with cluster. And cluster is used quite often in market research.
I didn't use cluster analysis.
So, and I found that very useful for social capital because it gives you typologies.
Okay.
It seems that
it's like the factorial analysis.
A bit, but it puts people into a cluster of area-based networks, group-based and school-based networks. These are the three, and I did different combination. You can explore whether there are 4 clusters or 5 clusters, but sometimes then the 5 clusters don't make any sense anymore, and it's very subjective. But this is also then
who define the clusters? You.
I define the cluster. And that is the thing, it emerges. However, what happens is, and this is why I think qualitative and quantitative is so important. It reflects what people were telling me. And I show you. So, whilst it is, I show you only one other thing, quantifying qualitative data. There's an example here later. So what I'm very aware that it's subjective. This is why in another project I involved also young people and I presented them with the clusters and said, does it make sense to you? Would you read the same into it? And these were very interesting conversations.
You contrast your feelings with the knowledge of the people.
Yes. So they say this all makes sense. So let's see. Here. Area-based. Young people who made up the area-based cluster comprised 35% of the total sample. More young men belong to this network than young women. I label this cluster area-based because they tend to spend time with the young people from their own area or neighborhood. Young people within this group tend to meet their friends on the street and spend their free time hanging around on the street. They are less likely to enjoy being with people from different lifestyles and are less likely to be involved in after-school activities. Yeah? So the factors, these type of factors, were accumulated in that cluster, and I called it area-based leisure because it was all about street, it was all about the area, the local area. As with the salience of this group in the survey, in the discussion groups and interview, young people who tend to belong to area-based networks also referred to friends who tended to be from the same area in which they lived, and thus they interacted with groups and people who are quite similar. So, because of all the analysis I have done, the qualitative analysis and the qualitative, there are also the area-based networks, and this is what people came up with. I just go to the top of the road, just hang around talking to people. Other than that, I stay in. The people I hang around with now I knew from the school anyway. I would see them at school, and a few of them I have known most of my life. If you think about important places in your locality, which would you say were important places for you? In Permanent, my family's house. I think that's about it really. So there's nothing else. Yeah. So I obviously combine different questions which reflect that for some people it is really restricted. But I say also in the analysis, bear in mind that these clusters are not ideal cases. They interact, and it's about the possibility to move in and out. But some people don't, from the qualitative data shows, some people don't move out. And there is a problem here. Yeah. Within this group tend to socialize, forming closely bonded relationships. We are all alike because we like to go out and have a good time together. We know the same people, we hang around the same area, we like the same things, we like the same clothes. So very much about the snow diversity. Yeah. So group-based networks again is explained, but again explained with qualitative data. So the qualitative data provides me with more insight of what I found. So, for example, here, this is interesting. In the group-based networks, which are all, they socialize in the school, but they socialize in the street, but a lot is in groups. But as with the previous one, it is evident that some of these groups have strong identities and sometimes also strong normative frameworks. So, yeah, developing some normative. So these groups start to vary. You have to be presented in the right way, of course, or you know that somebody will probably come up to you and say you shouldn't be dressing like that. This is a religious group. Yeah. My power is going away in a minute. So, you see, the qualitative suddenly presents me with some more insight which the quantitative didn't present to me.
And you analyze the quantitative with the qualitative information.
And when I present it, I present both together.
Very good.
And then, for example, so that is, but all this refers to in later. Remember my 4 different domains? I organized this data in the domains of social interaction. This is the social, it doesn't look at settings, it only looks at social interaction. So interpretation of trust was an element. How do young people interpret trust? Trust friends and peers, qualitative. Because the quantitative didn't provide me that. So I get an insight with the qualitative, bonded relationships, bonded trust. So it's all about the dynamics of interaction. All this first section is about presenting what the qualitative and the quantitative data says to me about the qualitative of human interaction in the socialization. So that is diversity. How diverse are your networks? So, and there I had a graph. Oops. Because, let's see here. I had the socializing patterns, but I had also a question around how diverse is it. So the socializing patterns emerged in the cluster analysis, and I compared then diversity, and I said people who socialize in groups are the more varied networks. So group socializing makes, I have in different groups, the least varied, and actually this was very interesting in this analysis. The school and college and area-based were very similar. And what I said there is the social interaction. This is why I said that the context matters, because this is not about context. This is about where young people interact. So if you think, actually in all the analysis, where young people interact doesn't matter so much. Yeah, diversity mustn't matter much. Whether they are at the school or college or the area, it's only here, group-based was very high in diversity, because of course they interact in a lot of groups. But actually the patterns of interaction of young people were in that kind of socialization, were very similar. When it came different, whether they came from the school or whether they came from a deprived area. Does it make sense? So the pattern itself weren't different, but where they were located was different. So the setting becomes more important than the day-to-day. So the day-to-day interaction is the same, but the setting marks a lot how they then construct their patterns of interaction. And that I can explore through here. So perception of agency is the first level. And that was done by the subjective agency, was about, more negative outlook on life was by individualistic explanation of personal failure, coupled with a sense of being stuck. Qualitative, lack of exit strategy results in confronting the present situation. Qualitative, fear of disappointment with aiming for something related to a certain apathy and sense of boredom. A positive outlook, strong sense of wanting to achieve things, sense of ambition, aims are related to personal skills, strong support and encouragement from parents. All this, and then comes the exploration of findings where people were talking, and a lot of this in the agency is qualitative. But here this is quantitative. I can influence decisions that affect my life. Generally I feel that adults listen to me when I have something to say. If I disagree with an adult agreed on, I can speak out. And they're very strong. People really identified, and that was very surprising. We thought they would say less. So here comes again. So every time I try to integrate some of the insights, so they have a strong sense of agency, but however the outlook at life is not so strong. So there are patterns emerging. One gives me some insight, the other gives me another insight. So sense of belonging is then the setting. And on this here I explore what are the settings, what does it mean, but I integrate here qualitative again and quantitative data. So that's throughout the things. And how I present it is constantly presented, the qualitative and the quantitative data. But this is not yet the discussion, because this is just a presentation of findings. And then I obviously have my chapter, which is the discussion chapter.
You have another chapter?
Because this is just the presentation of findings.
This is only the presentation?
Yes, the findings.
The 388?
No, this is the whole thesis.
Okay.
No, then comes here discussion. And the discussion obviously is where you then integrate your findings with the theory. And there I constructed it. I said here, this will be my discussion.
Okay.
And I start with this, go on here, and tell, what happened here?
So here.
I can show you the conclusion. Context matters, status. So I have messages for policy, messages for practice, and then sort of the contribution.
We could replicate your methodology here.
The context, so I say context matters, agency, there is this critical dynamic, the static and dynamic social capital, and not bridging and bonding.
Yes.
And the first young people's critical creative agency, and that is a term I have coined because people talk about critical agency. Sometimes they talk about creative, and I just say it needs to be critical, because if they think they have so much power, they need to be more critical about that. But you should still be creative. So they need to look at the structures and be critical, but you shouldn't hamper the creativity which come with this strong sense of agency. And so yes, that's more.
That's very good. Very good. I would like to read your thesis. It is possible that you give me a copy?
Oh yeah, I can. I can now.
Very good.
I have it on my memory stick. I can put it.
Or maybe here.
Do you have your?
You have for this?
Oh, can you store here a thesis?
I think probably.